I've taken my two-stroke tuner's handbook, and we're looking right now at the cylinder, the fuel as it comes into the engine and goes through the reed valves, and then goes into the combustion chamber and out the exhaust. And it says the reed valves will always restrict intake flow. Well, they do, because they're not an open thing like this. They have this block in the middle of them. Now, there's a couple things wrong, according to the books, wrong with these big reed valves and the small ones and everything else. That is, for instance, this right here is the intake for the big carburetor. It goes right here, okay, on the brand new Taida. To attach this to the carburetor, we need this giant rubber spigot. Now what I'm going to do is put the rubber spigot here and show you this point blank. The rubber spigot is put right over the intake, and you can see that huge where there's a smaller hole in here, okay, and that restricts airflow. So what I did was, last summer I took my CT intake, which basically has the same characteristics as the larger one, except that the base isn't as large. Okay. Now what I did was I took the 33mm rubber boot, and when you put it up to the brand new one, you can see that it's got a restriction there. If you put it next to the one that I've been working on, you can see where I've widened the hole out, the intake, to where it can have a better flow. You can see up through here, and over here and over here. It's kind of hard for me to do. It's cold in this shop and my hands are old. So this is a problem that I see with this Taida big intake. According to the two-stroke tuner's handbooks and Graham Bell's performance tuning, if we look at this through a big picture, okay, let's say that this garage right here is the inside of this large intake, okay, this Taida large intake. We've got a whole bunch of air coming in, a whole bunch of air coming out. The problem is, when we hook up the metal intake right here, according to the books, this valve is only as good as the smallest port in the valve. As you can see, where, damn it, you can see where we've got all this room, and you only have this little tiny black diameter hole right there, okay? So you can have the biggest carburetor in the world, you can have this huge carburetor, say like this is the carb, and your intake is right here. The book says that your carburetor is only going to be as efficient as that hole right there. So that's one problem. And I can prove this by, if you have a 125cc like a motocross cylinder, if you will look at that cylinder where the intake is for the reed valve, the reed valve fits in something like this, but the intake on the cylinder itself will be just as big. It will not be, I can't get my camera all the way over there, but it will not be small like the engine. So that's one problem that I see. So what I'm going to do, and I thought maybe I could you know, take this polished one and stick it on the big reed intake right here, it won't work. But I thought I might be able to do that. What I'm going to have to do is take, this is the CT, this is the Taida big valve I just got in. I'm going to need to widen this hole for better flow, like this one right here. And it does take a while to do, but it's kind of well worth it. What you do is you'll take the spigot for 33, which is here, and we'll put it on. Hands are cold and sorry. I don't know how to edit, so these videos will take a while. But if you got nothing better to do, you know, except for catching the coronavirus and sitting on your hands, this might be interesting. So what I do is I etch a line right on the inside of the black metal, and then I take this off, and what I do is I get out one of my Dremel grinders, which is somewhere, and I start to slowly widen the hole right here, so that it's, I wonder if I do it this way and show you, kind of give you an idea. If we took it like this, right? I don't know if we can see it that way. Oh, maybe not. Anyway, I think you get the idea. Then another thing, what I'm going to do with this big intake is I will tear down this reed cage and readjust it. I just want to make sure it's okay. Another problem that I do have, and maybe someone out there can help me with this problem, is that if you notice on this CT cage, there is no metal spring. These are metal spring stoppers, which keep a more crisper response on the valves right here, on the reed valves. That keeps them opening and shutting very, very well. Okay? Well, what I found in my CT ones, and all the rest of them too, they do come with these small metal springs. Problem is that you'll be riding along, everything will be fine, then all of a sudden you hear a small stutter. You get home, take this apart, one of these is gone. The metal fatigue at the very base, right down in here, causes them to get weak and get sucked into the cylinder. Well, it's a $700 or $800 cylinder that could be missing. So I'm going to take these off because they're cheap spring metal, and if anyone knows where I can get a very good thin quality carbon spring metal to where I can replace these with, I'd like to know if you happen to know any. And while you're, and this for all young guys out there and everyone that, you know, doesn't have a mechanic that just handy to ask all the questions, this handbook, which came out in '73, it was $5. This is the best two-stroke book I've found for beginners. The next one is, whoops, the two-stroke performance tuning, and like this shows you the reed valve right here and where the inlet port is. But as you can see, okay, your reed valve is right here. You can see your stops right there. The intake is just as big as the reed valve, whereas in the Honda Dio or Elite, the ports are very, very small. And according to the book, your power range and everything is only as good as the smallest part of the valve. So you could have an intake that's that big, okay? But if your inlet where you hook up the carburetor is only that big around right there, that is all the valve is good for. Everything has to be big and free-flowing to get as much fuel and air into the carburetor and through the engine and out the exhaust right here to create horsepower. If you really work on making your engine a very, very efficient air pump, that's what it is, it's an air pump, then you'll get more power. And this is what we're doing. We're just adding little things here and there to do that. So what I will be doing is I'm going to take this intake manifold and make it as big as this one, and then I polish it. It's kind of fun to polish it. And people say, oh, well, it won't help, this won't help, that won't help. You can't polish them. Well, it makes me feel better. I'm old and I don't give a damn. Okay, next.